Despite lacking in any sort of personality, the protagonists for each and every Pokemon game hold a special place in the hearts of fans. Appearances in other media like the anime, manga, and rival characters in future games have given us far more to get attached to, and for the most part they've been portrayed pretty well. That is, with the exception of Green from the Kanto region. Or Leaf, whatever fucking works for you guys, I don't know. So like, the first Pokemon game didn't have an option to play as a female character. I'm sure that you guys are aware that Crystal was when that first came around, which is odd to think about because from the very beginning, Pokemon had a predominantly mixed audience of both male and female that has only continued to further balance itself out in recent years. What makes this weirder is that an unnamed girl character showed up on the front cover of the strategy guide for Pokemon Red and Green in Japan. Ken Sugimori seemed to be the one that pushed for it because I guess he liked the idea of a trio that represented all three starter Pokemon. So it's clear that she was a consideration created following Pokemon Red and Green's development. This does beg the question as to why she wasn't in Blue or Gold and Silver alongside Red and his rival, especially because this female character ended up having an extremely prominent role in the Pokemon Adventures manga, with her debut in Japan landing as early as December the 16th, 1997. Pocket Monsters Special, or again using its English name Pokemon Adventures, is the most widely recognized manga across the globe that relates to the series. If you haven't read it, then you've still probably seen some memorable moments here and there that are at the very least pretty intriguing to look at out of context. I'd read all the way up to Ruby and Sapphire as a kid before dropping off, and I'm gonna be honest, coming back to it for this video was such a delight. It thoroughly understands what Pokemon should be in my eyes when it comes to storytelling, and I think the character of Blue, also known as Green in English, so that's what I'm gonna call her, I'm not sure why they switched the names around, but whatever, completely encompasses why. If I'm gonna put it bluntly, she's undeniably a shitty person to start out with. She takes advantage of Red to get what she wants, has no issue being selfish in desperate situations, and outright stole her starter Pokemon from Oak's lab. I think that description might be a bit of a turnoff when describing the appeal of a character to most people, but it's nice to have a leading protagonist with a bit of an edge to them. Despite how she often acts, she's pretty cool under pressure, is a lot smarter than you would initially give her credit for, and really evolves into a character that you root for super early on. She's not overly whiny like Silver was in the games and doesn't go off the rails like Bede for the sake of it. She's a fully realized character with a great personality that contrasts well with Red and Blue despite how different she is from the beginning of her journey. Throughout the rest of the Yellow, Gold, Silver, and Crystal stories, her backstory develops and she really matures as a character, which is especially astounding in a story that at that point realistically tries to equally divide the attention towards 7 main protagonists, all of which happen to be fully realized. I won't spoil any of her backstory that gets established later on, or any of the specifics in the adventure's plot as a whole, but she's really one of the best parts of an otherwise fantastic story that really captures the charm of old school Pokemon. I could spend hours gushing about every single character in the manga, but in short, I believe Adventures set a precedent for having a well-developed female rival in Green that future games still struggle with. As much as I'm still a fan of modern Pokemon games with multiple rivals like Black and White and Sword and Shield, I wish we would get a true third Dex holder at some point that gets equal attention. I like Marnie and Bede, but both of them feel mysteriously absent throughout Sword and Shield's rather low-key story. Likewise, I enjoy exploring the goals of Sharon and Bianca, but they very rarely clash with the player outside of battling you when you arrive at every new city. With all of that in mind, it's no wonder that this template for a female character being effectively repurposed and redesigned as Leaf in the Kanto remakes Fire Red and Leaf Green was pretty exciting. As much as Tajiri himself endorsed the world created in Hidenori Kusaka's manga adaptation, it's still a lot to expect this new official character in the games to pull from her interpretation in said manga. But likewise, that opens the floodgates to a wealth of entirely new character traits from the minds at Game Freak. Maybe not in the remake where she's a silent protagonist, I get why Fire Red and Leaf Green didn't change that much, but perhaps in future games, she could get a role in the spotlight. Generation 2 remakes would be the perfect opportunity for that, or even by simply appearing in games where Red needs a female counterpart, such as the then unreleased Super Smash Bros. Brawl, where he would later appear. So, what did we actually get? Nothing. We got nothing. Well, aside from being an avatar for the multiplayer in Colosseum and Gale of Darkness, no appearance in the Gen 2 remakes despite the fact that they brought in characters like Steven fucking Stone, and no counterpart in Super Smash Bros. When Red joined the battle as the Kanto Pokemon trainer. No appearance as a former champion in the Pokemon World Tournament in Black and White 2 despite the appearance of Red and Blue, and most egregiously, no signs of her in Pokemon Sun and Moon despite fully redesigning Red and Blue to be adults in the post-game with their own 3D portrayals, battles, and musical rearrangements. There were so many opportunities to bring her back, but she was mostly missing in action for a decade. She was still going strong in the manga, but it really makes you wonder what the point was in introducing her in the games with Fire Red and Leaf Green if she wasn't going to stick around. Of course they did it because the Kanto remakes needed a female option for the player character, as every Pokemon game should, but I think that it ultimately defeats the purpose of inclusivity if you don't give her the same love and attention that Red has had over the years. Despite having zero presence as a character within the series, Leaf still served the purpose of being an avatar that you were supposed to relate to. The series actively pokes fun of Red being a mute that chooses not to talk, but he's still iconic because he represents what Pokemon was to so many people growing up. You experienced the world through controlling him, and for many players of a later generation, Leaf was no different. They're both blank slates that you could project yourself onto, so it was just disappointing to see two interpretations of the character that Sugimori conjured up over 20 years ago to go to waste. One was a shining example of how to do it right, but had no grounds to make an impact in a series that tends to play it safe more often than not when it comes to its mainline games. And the other was simply left in the dust whilst Red and Blue moved on for no reason in particular. Chris from Pokemon Crystal was in a similar position, but actively served her role when redesigned as an NPC if you chose the male option in the Johto remakes, and even had multiple counterparts in the anime. So what was the deal with Leaf? Why didn't she get that treatment in Fire Red and Leaf Green? Why didn't they bring her back as the series had progressed? See, you'd think the time to have her come back would be during the next inevitable attempt to return to Kanto, being 2018's Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. So after this complete drought for almost 15 years, they gave us Green. No, not Leaf, and not that Green either. It's been almost 2 years since this game came out, and I still don't get it. When giving new protagonists to the latest Kanto remakes, Game Freak had ample opportunity to bring back Red and Blue, as if they haven't done that enough already. With that role in Let's Go, it surprised me that they didn't even use the remakes designs, but it doesn't really bother me all that much since I was never really the biggest fan of Gen 3's interpretations of them. Either way, Blue has a place in the game's story, and Red is the super boss he always has been, but Green was a character introduced to the player when you capture Mewtwo in Cerulean Cave. Upon seeing her, I was actually pretty excited. I thought Let's Go really decided to do something a bit more daring by bringing a character from the manga into the games, her slight redesign notwithstanding. In games that seem to play especially safe, it looked to be a fantastic choice, and really hit hard for superfans of the series like me, as opposed to the younger target demographic that Let's Go was clearly designed for. She was even called Green, leading me to believe that she was the very same character that she was in the manga, introduced for nothing more than fan service. With all that said, I feel like I'd be forgiven for expressing confusion when she started to repeatedly throw Pokeballs at me like I was a Pokemon, and then proceed to give me the Mega Stones for Mewtwo, and then disappear. I think this video script was pretty good up until this point, but now I have no idea what to say. It's just a bunch of question marks. Why does she act like this? Why bring in a character that only a dedicated fan base will recognize, sideline Leaf, and then have this new interpretation of Green be not only confusing, but outright weird, not built up in the slightest, and honestly just super bizarre? I mean, Blue was included in the game's story, so why wasn't she? Make up a story about how she stole the Mega Stones from Team Rocket or some shit. It would be in line with her character from the manga and would provide an explanation as to why she has them at the very least. I'm not even asking for her to be identical to a manga counterpart or even remotely similar, but going through all the trouble to sideline the new character you made based off Green to then return to a character known as Green already sets up an expectation for the players that are familiar. Not only did they break that expectation, but they made it even more confusing for the perspective of players that never even read the Pokemon manga. Let's Go genuinely shortchanged me out of a reference, and I never thought that could be possible. Like, who is this character there for? Most people don't know who she is, and the people that do know who she is are either confused that she's not Leaf, or confused that she's not like Green from the manga. Because of this, we now have 3 interpretations of a character that never had a concrete personality or even a design to begin with. It makes sense why Game Freak has no idea what to do with her because they put themselves in this mess. Granted, it actually surprised me that her team in-game was reflective of her team in the manga, mainly her Blastoise and Clefable. That classic Kanto trio with their starters parallel to that guidebook art and their subsequent manga interpretations all those years ago have finally come together in a singular adventure. It's honestly something I never thought I would see, so you can imagine that I was further disappointed that when Masters rolled around and it was finally time to give this character a concrete personality in a game dedicated to the trainers themselves, they not only backtracked to Leaf, but also gave her an Eevee and soon to be a Venusaur? Normally I wouldn't care about this sort of thing that much, but as a player and longtime fan of the series, I've been told to care about this mystery character so many times now, and there's always been something missing. She was absent in the original game. She didn't appear alongside Red and Blue in Gold, Silver, and Crystal. She got a full redesign in Fire Red and Leaf Green that went nowhere, which was especially odd when compared to Chris/Lyra, despite having a similar enough origin story to their designs. She was then absent for 15 years, not appearing in crossovers, remakes, and main series games where she clearly could have and should have been. She then had another redesign based on her much-loved manga appearance, but was a complete 180 in terms of personality, to the point where she lost all of her appeal to the people that actually understood who she was. And now we're back to Leaf, but now she's using Pokemon that have never been identified with her before. Again, normally I wouldn't care, but it's so clear that she's been mishandled, and the people who make these games have no idea what to do with her. The sad part is they're so close to getting her right, and now that there are a million interpretations of her, and outside of a figure and a long overdue appearance in Smash, there's no telling where Green or Leaf will go next, if anywhere at all, and that's just unfortunate. But she's still a character that we don't even know the definite interpretation of. Are Leaf and Green different characters? From what we know, there's been no confirmation of whether they are or they aren't. I think that might be what they're going for, but Red and Blue aren't wildly different to their remake counterparts, so I don't see why she should be. At the end of the day, she's confusing and ultimately has been grossly mishandled by their series as a whole. I hope that in the future, when Game Freak decides to reintroduce characters, they do it less clumsily, especially since this sets a dangerous precedent for the future of the series. Let's hope that in Let's Go Johto they don't bring back Yucine but mess up and have him searching for Raikou instead of Suicune. Or Girafarig, I don't know. Sorry for extending the end screen. I wanted to apologize for not having a video come out in a while. I was struggling with getting a few ideas off the ground because they were in scripting hell, so I hope you've enjoyed this one quite a bit. Thanks for being so patient.